Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to NDE STE Ireland. And today we have Siobhán Brady, my neighbour from up the road, and she is going to tell us her story, and we'll get some questions then from other participants to the meeting here. So, Siobhán, welcome, and thank you for coming in here, our first guest speaker.
Oh, it's great to be here, Charlie. Thank you so much. Delight. So I am down at the moment, like even though I'm only down the road from you, Charlie, I am down in the south east of Ireland, in Wicklow, and I'm just looking out the window here. It's just the wind is howling around the place. Sure, it's great. We went down to the beach earlier and just let the wind blow through, and the waves were crashing up against the stones and everything, right up to the where you'd usually have a great walk. There was no room for walking today, so it was great. So yeah, so hi to everybody, and nice to see you all here. I am Siobhán Brady. I refer to myself as a spiritual mentor. So I'm a psychic medium, Reiki master, Rahani practitioner, shamanic practitioner, shamanic counsellor, and I'm also what I would describe myself as being a channel for divine energies. So I would say I had a pretty normal life. I was working away, and then I was married, and in 2004 I had my son Finnan, and then I had my daughter the following year, Zoe, and everything was going fine and lovely, and I was a stay-at-home mum then with my two children. And in 2011 I was singing with a gospel choir. I sing as well, so that was my gift that I felt I had been given since birth, was my singing, and I just loved singing. I still do. So I was singing with a gospel choir, and we were doing we were in a TV competition, and we had got onto the TV, onto the place where we were going to be on TV, or actually this was the second round, because we had got through the first round. And so we were off in these hotels, and we were doing big rehearsals and all that, and a guy had joined our choir about 6 months previous to the whole competition kicking off, and I used to see him looking at me a little bit and watching me and stuff like that. So it was only afterwards that you kind of go, oh, that's why he was looking at me, and that's why all that was happening. So I had noticed this anyway. We were away on this particular weekend, and I walked into the restaurant to have dinner. Now, there was 35 or 36 of us in the choir, and I walked in to have dinner, and I was saying goodbye to my children on the phone, and I looked up the table to where the girls were. I could not see any chairs beside any of the women, but I could see this guy and another guy, but there was a seat in between the two of them. So I was like, gosh, I'll go over here and sit beside these lads. And I sat down and I started chatting away to the man who was, his name is Liam. And we got into conversation. And my brother, who was also in the choir at the time, had told me, I don't know how long before that, that this man could give messages from spirit, like a medium, or give messages from loved ones who had passed over and that kind of thing. So we're sitting anywhere, we're having dinner and we're chatting away, and I said something to him about that I'd forgotten to bring a book with me, because I always read to get myself to sleep or whatever. And he was like, oh, I have a book in my room. It's some sort of a spiritual, I can't even remember now what the book was. But he said, you know, if you want, you can come up to the room later and I'll give you the book. So I was like, yeah, no problem. And then he started telling me about this pendulum. And I was kind of looking, I'm going, I think I know what he's talking about, but I wasn't 100% sure, because I was as green as the grass now when it comes to anything spiritual. Like, I would have maybe had a couple of readings over the course of my life up until that point, but no, apart from that, I knew nothing. So he was telling me about this lovely pendulum that he had with this rose quartz crystal on it, and he was like, and you know what I do, like, kind of thing. And I was like, well, yeah, my brother Stephen said a few things and blah blah blah. So anyway, make a long story short, went up to his room that night to get the book, and he put me sitting on the side of the bed and started to talk to me about grounding my energy. And I was going, okay. And I was still very much like, oh, this is great fun and blah, blah, blah. And then he gave me the pendulum and he was telling me to hold it over my hand, which I did. And he was telling me that I could ask it questions, yes or no questions, and it would move in a certain direction, which it started to do. But then it started spinning out, way out over my hand. And he was standing looking at me going, oh my God, Siobhán, your energy is just off the charts. And I was going, oh, really? Okay. I just kept doing this, and then it stopped and it just kept quivering over my hand. And he then started talking about angels, which I would obviously believe in angels, but I had never really connected or anything like that with them before. So he started talking about angels, and then my grandmother came through from spirit, and we were chatting and chatting, and I still was holding at this point, and I was holding on to the rose quartz. I couldn't let the rose quartz go. And I used to smoke in those days, so we were smoking out the window of the hotel, as you do. And I said, I can't let this go. And he said, it's okay. He said, you can bring it with you. So I was like, grand. And he said, when you go to bed tonight, the last 3 words, he said, that come into your head, try and remember them. And when you wake up in the morning, the same thing. So I went to bed, and I can only remember 2 of the words, and 2 of the words were Spain and airplane. And the same thing the next morning. There was a 3rd word, but I can't remember it. So the next day we were in rehearsals the whole day for the TV show the following day, and something was very different with me. I can't describe it. It was like something had come alive in me, like I was on this different level. I was very excited. I was very high, I suppose it's the only way you could describe it. I had this energy going through my body, and it was just like something had woken in me. And it was February time, so we were outside and we had jackets on, and we'd be having a cigarette or whatever at the time. And I had the pendulum in my pocket the whole time, and I just kept rubbing the rose quartz all day. I was doing this. And then over the course of the conversation of the morning, if there was people brought up airplanes and Spain. So I was like, whoa. And I was all excited, and I was telling my brother, like, something definitely happened and I don't know what it is, and all that kind of thing. So, and as I said, the whole day I kept going around rubbing this pendulum, and it broke. The rose quartz snapped in my pocket. And I went up to my friend Liam and I said, oh my God, I said, I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry. But I said, I didn't break it. I didn't drop it or anything. I said, I was just rubbing it and it broke. And he goes, Siobhán, I'm telling you, your energy is like just off the charts. So I was like, okay. So then that night we spoke a little bit more. And I think my cousin was coming through from spirit. And then the next day we were on the TV and we were doing the show. So we were more focused on that day. But we got on the bus then to come home. And I was sitting beside a friend of mine called Anne, and we were 2 very good talkers. We could talk for Ireland. And I kept hearing Mary, and it was like here in my head on the right-hand side, Mary, 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 Mary. And I was looking at her like she should be hearing this as well, but she was making no signs that she was hearing anything. And I was going, okay, I'm not going to say anything, because I was thinking, okay, there's a couple of Marys in the choir. Am I just thinking this, or what is it? So this continued most of the way home. And then it took me like forever and a day to get home, because I got a flat wheel and there was all this kind of stuff. And the next day I had to go pick up my car, came back, and I lay down on the couch. Kids were in school and everything like that. And I'm just laughing to myself here now, because I really have to PC the next bit, because the language that I used at the time, I can't use that here. But I fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up to a voice in my ear with somebody going, wellies. And I immediately sat up and I went, I won't tell you what I said, but it was like, oh, I swore, because I knew straight away who it was, and it was my uncle in spirit. And it was just like this excitement went through me again. And then I realized that Mary is his mother, my grandmother, my mother's mother. So this was my mother's brother. And that's when it started from there. So before I knew it, I was awake nearly all night, and I was channeling, and I was writing, and I was angels were coming in, and then I was really out of my body, but I didn't realize that I was out of my body or what actually was happening. As I said, I was as green as the grass, and all this grounding thing that my friend had spoken about, like the week before or a few days before, I was like, sure, I didn't know, I didn't have a clue. So and we were meeting, this was the Monday, we were meeting on the Wednesday for choir, so I was talking to him the whole time, and he was like, we're going to have to get you to bring you to the angel shop and get you some crystals so we can get grounded. So by the time, that was on the Wednesday, by the time Friday came, which is the day we decided to go, I was literally walking around like quivering bloke. I was just in a completely different dimension. I can't describe it. It was euphoric, but it was very emotional. Like when I think about it now, it was so emotional. And so I went and met my friend, and I remember us having we went to a cafe first and met another friend of his, and I was literally like, my hand was like this nearly the whole time. I was so up there. So then he took me across the street to the angel shop in Cavan Town, which is the county from where I'm from, and we walked in, and my grandmother now at this point was in full flight. There was no let up with the talking to me, so that's probably why my energy was as well. And we walked in, and he was like, right, we're going to get you some crystals. There was this lovely lady there. Her name was Mary. And my grandmother was like, lovely woman, lovely woman, lovely woman, lovely woman. It was almost like I was manic in some sense in my head. So I remember speaking to her and telling her that I wanted to get some crystals, and she brought me over to this lovely big glass case, and I can't remember if she handed me the pyrite or whether I chose it, but anyway, as soon as it was in my hand, I went whoo, my head nearly hit the floor, and I looked at her and I said, oh my God, what was that? And she goes, you're being grounded. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I can't remember exactly what happened next, because by the time I was leaving I had crystals, but the whole next bit that happened, I have no real full recollection from that. So then this other lady arrived, and my grandmother was like, business, 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 and she was the owner. And I just was strolling around, and Liam, my friend, was talking these, and then I was on the shelf, and literally my head went in like that to a chalice, and I put my hand in, I picked it up, and I turned around to where they were across the shop, and I started doing this with the chalice. And excuse me now if I get emotional, because I haven't told this story in a long time, since 2011, and it still makes me emotional. So I was doing this across the room, and the lovely lady, the Mary, I said, I wasn't afraid at that point, but I went, oh, I said, what's happening? And the lovely lady, Mary, said, oh, she said, you've totally changed. She said, you look like a wizard. And I was like, okay, now I was kind of going, okay, this is a bit far out for me. So I put the chalice back on the shelf, and I went over to where the three of them were talking. And I don't know what they were talking about, to be honest, but I stood there for, I'd say, literally maybe 20 seconds. And I had no control. I went, spun around, back over to the shelf, picked the chalice up, and then I was brought all the way over the far side of the shop like that, and I was holding the chalice, and I started to get really afraid at this point. And the owner, who was a medium also, she said, I said, oh, at that point I was like, oh my God, what's happening, and I was getting really scared. And she said, you're being brought to the light. There was a window at the far side, and the glass was just all whitened out, so you couldn't see out through it, and I was right up against it at this point, because I couldn't go any further. And she said, you're being brought to the light, and she was like, "Are you feeling emotional?" And I was roaring and crying. I was like, "Yeah." And then I fell on the floor. And I was still holding on to the chalice. And funny, I was thinking about the chalice last night. And I could hear a voice going, "I've got you, I've got you, I've got you, I've got you." And I just felt that I was held, like, I don't know who the voice was. There was a name, like I used to call her what did I used to call her? Can't remember now what I used to call her, but she was the one that looked after me, kind of thing. And I don't know how long I was on the floor, but I felt okay then. But then my friend, they were all glued to the floor. My friend then eventually snapped out of it, and he came over and he picked me up, and I took his face in my hands and I stared straight into his soul, and I just knew I was looking straight into his soul. And a few minutes later, I presume, I was like, "Oh, I have to go. I have to go get my kids from school." It was, I don't know, like the time frame is a little bit off for me, but, and I said, I had crystals in a bag. So I had bought and paid for crystals. I have no recollection of that. And I just kept saying, "I have to go now because I have to get my kids." And I was like, I had gone from that to, I don't know where I was. I was a completely different dimension by the time I was walking out the door. And we walked up the street, and I was shaking all over. And I said to my friend, I said, "Will you reverse my car out for me? Because I didn't think I'd be able to reverse the car. I think I was all right going straight, but if I had to reverse or do anything else, it was going to be a bit of a problem." So he reversed my car out, but I was standing out in the car park, and I looked up to the heavens, and I just said, "Thank you, God, for whatever that was." And a voice answered me, and he said, "You're welcome, my child." And I got into my car, and I was elated, as I said earlier, and it was euphoric, and I had to drive about a half an hour from there to get back to pick my kids up from school. And then, like, this was like, so this, like, from Sunday to Friday, this had all happened in the space of this short time. So I was totally, as I said, euphoric. I was like a child at Christmas, and as the days went on, I was starting to lose weight. Even though I was eating, I wasn't sleeping. I was awake all night, every night. Spirit, I was writing stuff down. The angels had come in. I think when I was in that shop, I had bought a book with During Virtue and angel cards and all this kind of stuff. And then I told my then husband. I told him, and he was okay with it to a point. And the night that I told him, Liam was on the phone with me, so that if there was any questions that I could answer, he had me to talk to my husband about it, because it was still very, very much, I felt, away from me, even though on another level, Liam couldn't really help me anymore because I had gone to a higher place, and he was exhausted on as well. So, and that night, when I was talking to my husband, there was a photograph of my son on one of the kitchen cabinets. And I kept looking at the photo, and I couldn't stop looking at the photo, and it kept being drawn, and I was sitting, and it was like way behind me up on one of the kitchen cabinets. And then I just said to my husband, I said, "Will you," my ex-husband now, but I said, will you just go up and check on Finn?" And when he went up and he came back down, he was as white as a ghost, and he said, they had these little baby blankets, like he was 6 or 7 at the time, but they still had their blankies, and he had it wrapped so tight around his head that he said, "If I hadn't have gone up, Siobhán, I don't know if he would have been continued to breathe." And then when he sat down, a whole surge of energy came into the space, and I was still on the phone, and all of this was going on, and we're talking about the energies and all that. So he was kind of coming to terms with it and he was okay with it. But I had this surge of love that was going through me all the time for every living being. And it was like I was so high in myself. And so then I went, I don't know how long after, like the time frame, this all happened between February and April or May of that year. So it's the same year, but I'm confused about timelines. So then I decided that I would tell my parents. And my mother, when I started speaking to me, which is her mother, she was like, oh, she said, she took out her memorial card and asked me to describe what her mother was wearing in the photo. And I was sitting at the kitchen table in my parents' house going, here now. And so I said, she's wearing blue, I think, and yeah. And my mother, she didn't want to know anything. You see, she was just so dead set against it. So what's her hair like? And I described her hair, and then she said, and what is she holding in her hand? And I was like, oh, rosary beads. And I went, no. I said, cup of tea maybe. And in the photo, my granny had a chain hand, but it's buttoned off for the frame of the photo. So, and I was able to answer all those things thanks to my granny that was giving me the information. And it's so unusual in my home. I have 7 siblings, and there's always loads of traffic in and out of my parents' house. And for the whole time I was in there, nobody else came into the house. All that was there was my mum and my dad while I was telling them this. And my mum was like, oh, you need help. You need to see a psychiatrist. This is now another thing because, you always wanted to be a singer and that didn't work out for you. So now maybe this is your new way. And, and my dad was more calm about it. But my mother was like, but I said, Mum, you've always had these things yourself where you've when your brother died and herself and her sisters dreamt about boots at the top of a big hole or something. They had different dreams then when my cousin died as well. Oh, but I wouldn't let it in, I wouldn't let it in. So, so Mum wasn't that excited, and the fact then that I told them I was talking to God, I was off my rocker completely. And so as I said earlier, I was losing weight because the energy was just so high, and I wasn't sleeping either. But anyway, I decided to go to the doctor just to get bloods and that done, just to see that everything was okay. And the next day I got a phone call from the surgery from the secretary saying, oh, your blood work came back perfect, but the doctor would like to have a word with you. So I was like, okay. And it didn't dawn on me, not for a second. And so I picked the kids up from school and brought them in, and then I was sitting in the doctor's surgery with my doctor, and she said, I had a phone call from your mother and she's very concerned. She says you're hearing voices. And again, I swore, and I was like, oh my God, they want to have me committed. Because at this point she had gotten into my ex-husband's head, and he was turning. And so she said they can't do anything, she said, without my consent, but would you be willing to go and get yourself checked out? So I said, yeah. I said, but they won't find anything wrong with me. And I was kind of angry. I was angry at that. So 1,000,000% sure that I was talking to God, I was talking to angels, I was channeling spirit, and nobody was going to convince me of anything else. So so then it all started, and I had to go to a psych unit for an evaluation, and my mother and my ex-husband were my two guards, you could say. And I was brought into this room with this psychiatrist, and I had been doing an awful lot of writing at that point, as I said, and I had one of my books with me. I was writing all the time, and poetry and some of my own stuff from my past had been written down, and the angels had said to me that this was going to be one of the hardest things that I'd ever have to do. I still didn't think that it would unfold the way that it unfolded, but I was like, yeah, and I knew I'd be fine on one level, but I still had this. When the psychiatrist said to me I was displaying grandiose behaviour, I couldn't understand it on one level because I was so sure that I was going okay and that, you know, nothing was going to happen to me. So I put such faith in spirit, and he wanted to admit me, and I nearly died. The shock went through my body. So I was in one room, and my mum and Declan were in another room, and he's and I was being so afraid when I was in that space that I was being watched by camera. I was trying to get really paranoid, and I was trying to stay so quiet, and I wouldn't agree to being admitted. I didn't particularly like the doctor. There was a bit of a communication barrier with him, and I just felt he wasn't seeing me as I was, and so then I said no to being admitted. So he asked me if I would be willing to go to meet the consultant in the outpatients department. So I agreed to that, and again I was brought by my mother and my ex-husband, and I was talking to a nice doctor, and then the consultant was brought in, and he was really nice. I really liked him from the minute I met him, and he was like, "Oh, this is all very positive," and everything. He said, "You know that you're here," and I, like, at that point I was calling God honcho, the head honcho, and I had these little with the angels, and every time I see happen I knew that was God, and all this kind of stuff, and I had stuff written down. And he was like, "This is all very positive and it's all really lovely, but what if those voices change and they tell you to hurt your children?" And nothing like that had crossed my mind for a split second that that could be the case, you know. And then he said, the consultant said that he wanted to admit me for 72 hours. And because he mentioned my children, that was what started to unravel me a little bit inside with my 1,000,000% trust, or whatever I felt that I had, that it was all real. And then I started to crumble a little bit and question, maybe this isn't real, maybe I am mad, maybe I am nuts. So so I agreed to go into the psych unit, and I went in on a Tuesday, and by that night they had me on some sort of medication that by the time I walked from the room back into my room, I was staggering all over the corridor. I couldn't even undress myself. I fell asleep on top of the bed, and I couldn't even get undressed. And they kept me on some sort of meds while I was in there. And so I went in on the Tuesday, got out on the Friday with a clatter of tablets and medications that I was told to take, and I had to go back in on the Monday, and he explained to me that he had put me on antipsychotic medicine and antidepressants despite no symptoms. And because of my fear, and that maybe would do something to my children, I took medication. I got to I went to such a low place. I was always, and still am, very, very outgoing, very bubbly, love life, love fun, love laughter, love, any bit of crack at all. And I'll be in the middle of it or starting it. I just flatlined. And a bomb could have gone on or under me, and I wouldn't have noticed. And so I was still attending the Green Road, the outpatients department, and it was now, I'm not sure of the timeline, as I said, but I started seeing a nurse then, and she was really good and started trying to help me to get myself back on track. So one of the biggest things that really pushed me was I was starting to get feel a bit better. So this, I don't know when this was, because I know I was still taking meds up until the end of 2011 and into 2012. The antidepressants, I was off the antipsychotics, I got on really quickly, but I was taking those medications, and I was starting to come out of myself a little bit, and I went to visit my cousin. I think we went for a walk or something, because they were all like, oh, you just need to get yourself out of the house. The typical thing you say to a person that's so depressed, like, and almost suicidal, which I did get to that place where I thought I didn't want to be here. But like, get out of the house, go for a walk. So anyway, I was feeling well one day to do that, and I stopped on my way home, and I had my handbag on the passenger side of the car on the floor, and I had crystals in it. And I stopped at the shop, and when I came out of the shop, the crystals were sitting on my driver's seat of the car. And there was only 2 of them, and I just looked at them and I picked them up and I said, okay, this is it. Now I have to start channeling all this anger and this, because I had so much anger about everything that was done to me, like that, being put on all these meds and shit that I didn't need. And I'm probably angry at myself too for agreeing to take them. So during that time I was very flatlined, and I wasn't really communicating with spirit. But when that happened with the angel things, I started to get back into it, and still a little wary and all of that. And then I started a course in town, and one day on the course, one of the tutors said to me, because I was always talking about the angels and spirit, and she said, will you bring in your angel cards and maybe do a little chat for people about the angels? So I said, yeah. And this was going into 2012 and into 2013. So again, the timeline, I'm a bit fuzzy, but so I brought the cards in and I was doing a chat, and then she said to me, maybe you'd pull a card for everyone. And I was like, what? She was like, will you pull a card for everyone? So there was 12 or 14 people in the group. So I went round and I pulled a card for everyone, and did a little reading for everyone, and that was it. Up to that point, I had been maybe pulling cards now and again for friends, but I'd always read out of the book, and sometimes a little bit of extra come through, and then, but it was just, then I was like, okay, I need to really sort of get myself back on track here. So then I went on to do Reiki. I started doing spiritual work. Then I did mediumship, and that was in 2012, 2013. And then I started doing readings for my home, my marital home, and it just started to. I was very grounded in it then. So I suppose with all of the upheaval of the actual awakening stuff, the medication did bring me to a place where I was so flatlined that I had nowhere to go from there, only back up, and I was able to handle it. And I went to see a lady who did some sort of I think it was talk therapy, you could say. I think that's what she called it at the time. And she did a session with me, and the next day I felt like I hit by a bus. I felt so heavy in my body. I was still out of my body the whole time for probably a year and a half. So this brought me back in, and then I knew what it was like to be grounded, and I knew what it felt like when I wasn't grounded. So I started then to practice that. And as I said, then I just started following into Reiki, Reiki, all of these kind of different things, and I'm still training in different modalities, but yeah, went on then to and then and to Mullingar and with my kids, and then I was in the country, and when I moved into the bigger town, everything just started to expand, and I started holding circles in my house, and um, God kept speaking to me, and the angels, and I would write and draw. And I can't really draw, but I would draw bits and things, and so that was like 2014, and then I just built on my business from there, and with Spirit, um, and then in 2020, I decided I'm going to go to Spain for a while. I left Mullingar in Spain, came back from Spain in 2022, and moved in with my parents for what I thought was going to be a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and it was 2 years later. I've just moved out a few and I, I work now full time as a psychic medium and a healer, and that's probably everything. There's so many little things in between, like with clients and friends and things that happened, and that you kind of forget sometimes, you know. And even just talking about all of this again is it's stirred up stuff that I haven't really, not that I haven't thought about it in a long time, but I haven't probably delivered the story to people who have never heard it before in a long time. So other people would be very aware, and they would be used to hearing me say certain things about it. But it's very emotional, and there's probably loads more that I could tell you, but I can't even see the time, so I don't know what time it is, Charlie. But that's kind of pretty much it. Up to date, like I'm now still doing the work, as I said, and I hold circles, and I teach psychic mediumship, I teach Reiki, I teach Rahani. I'm opening up now to do a voice activation workshop where people can let their voice out, because we don't express, and we don't do, and we don't say, and we don't, you know, we let ourselves get held back by whatever. So stuff like that. Because singing, as I said, I thought was my gift, and yet I'm not really using it. So I'm pushed by Spirit now to
Siobhán, we're not quite hearing you at the moment. Your bandwidth is, it says your bandwidth is low. I say we heard about 98% of what you said, but every now and then the words were missing. There was kind of a long pause there where we didn't hear you. Are you still there? Hello? Okay, I think we've lost Siobhán. Oh no. Oh yeah, I can see you're still there, Siobhán. Yeah, with your camera off, maybe we can hear you again. Maybe what you said in the last minute or so. Before.
Okay. You can remember what I said in the last minute. Um, so I haven't that story to.
It's very hard to hear you at the moment.
Okay, I can't because it's like sound is and Um, I think it's just the Wi-Fi because of the wind outside, do you know?
Yeah, it's very stormy.
Yeah,
Yeah, anyway, no, thank you for sharing all that. And I've known you about 2 months or thereabouts, and I didn't know the full extent of your story or what you've been through. Um,
yeah,
you know, I'm a mental health professional, and you told me that you had some issues with mental health service, you know, but there's absolutely no way you have mental illness. Absolutely not.
I do that.
You know
I
that.
do know that.
Well, you know that, but there's no way you should have been near a psych unit or had that assessment. And what you mentioned there, or do you think the voices will tell you to harm your children? That's a nonsense thing for a psychiatrist to say. I've sat in,
Yeah, but it,
I've sat in on many psychiatric assessments, and um, you know, I couldn't see a psychiatrist asking that question now. You know, when you're talking about, they'll ask, are the voices nasty? Are they kind? If somebody says they're lovely,
mm,
really nice, then they say, well, it's not harming you, it's not harming anyone else. So enjoy your life, you know. That's
yeah,
that's what would happen nowadays. But
yeah,
you know, like I was telling you at some stage, the science of near-death experience is out there, the science of spiritual awakening is out there. And I've done training in that,
yeah,
and part of my role is to bring that science into the mental health service in Ireland. So you've highlighted why that's so important. It's
absolutely.
there's absolutely no need for you to go through those experiences. And can I just say something else as
And
well?
just,
You said you like crack
yeah.
in Ireland. Crack means in Ireland, crack means fun. It's an Irish word that means fun, and
I
it's
should have said that. I did live in the States for a few years, so I should have remembered that. Yeah, yeah,
you know, I was kind of laughing inside when you said, "Yeah, I like crack," but no, you like fun, and that's true. There's always a laugh with you. You're very quick with the humor. But I felt quite emotional there. Hearing your story and knowing you've been through all that, and
yeah.
a couple of
And
months
yet, you
ago,
know, Charlie, you say, you know, that that should never have happened. You know, I I look back and I think it definitely has brought me to where I am today. I wouldn't want to do it again, but I would definitely say yes to it again. That
okay,
I'm where I am now.
but not hearing you so good. I think
That makes sense.
I think the bandwidth again is affecting the your voice. But I think
Yeah,
saying the experience taught you something that you wouldn't have understood if you hadn't been through it. Is that what you were saying?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So anyway, I was just saying there about 2 months ago, I was because I talk to God and Jesus and my guardian angel all the time as well, and sometimes they talk back. But I was
yeah,
saying, you know, I love all my spiritual friends who are abroad and in different parts of Ireland, and you know that I meet them on Zoom or online. But I said I need people locally that I can just go to, you know, and hang out with and get to know them. And about 2 days later, your advertisement came up on Facebook. So I said, "Oh, thanks very much. You know, thanks for listening to me
yeah,
before I ever went to talk to you." But the way I experience you now, if I can summarize it into a few words, is okay. You're a brilliant crack. You're good fun. And also, you're very genuine, and I would describe you as fearless as well, fearless to be yourself. And that's helped me.
yeah,
That on its own has helped me so much. And also, when I'm in your presence, even now on Zoom, I feel myself activated. I feel the energy vibrating within me. And the more I've been through healing circles and Psychic Sunday, and even at the drumming circle last week, there's more and more of me coming out. And finding myself, and that's just
yeah,
whatever you're putting out there. I don't even know if you're doing it, but it's amazing. And also, At one point, we chatted for about 2 hours. I just wanted to see, what are you really about, because I've met some people in the past who weren't genuine, and I was, you are genuine. But I was telling you about people in my
Uh,
life that you have never met, and then you started telling me about those people, you know. So
yeah,
you're very tuned in. But thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for talking today, and thank you for everything you've done for me and for others. I wonder if anyone has a question they'd like to ask. Um, just raise your hand there if you have a question. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, Claudia has a hand raised. Okay, Claudia,
I,
unmute yourself.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, Siobhán. I don't have a question. I just want to thank you from my heart for sharing your story. It was deeply moving. And I agree with Charlie. You are very, very courageous. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Claudia. And Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'm sorry that happened, Siobhán, and I
Elizabeth,
also,
difficult to hear you.
okay, let's see.
If you move closer to the mic, maybe.
Can you find?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Siobhán, I just want to say I'm just so sorry that happened. I had a hospitalization also, and I lost kind of years of my life. But I just want to say that it's tough, and the West doesn't understand that there's a time in everyone's life where our Kundalini rises and we come into our
Yeah.
fullness. You know, some people call it a midlife crisis, and they just run from it. I just think it's amazing that you did not run from all this, and you let the full channeling happening. So I wanted to ask you, are you still channeling now? How's that part of your life going?
Yeah, I am. I would say I channel I do every day, readings, healings. It's amazing. It's just I just love. I am so grateful to the journey because that when you are learned and learn to trust myself and learn to trust God and spirit is journey. Yeah, I just when I say I
Um, I think we lost. I think we lost her. Okay, I'm just going to pause recording now and see if I'll send Siobhán a message. Okay, I've just hit record again. Okay, now where were we? Okay, do you want to say something there, Siobhán?
um no, I think I was just answering Elizabeth, saying that I'm still channeling and doing that every day of work. Um, that's what I was saying. I think when I got booted out.
Yeah, no, I can hear you perfectly now.
Okay.
Yeah, I get the impression you're channeling all the time.
I think so because I talk to spirit all the time, so it's a constant conversation in my head, and especially when I'm in my car, I'll be having full conversations with spirit as if they're sitting in the passenger seat. So and I check in all the time with spirit with everything that I'm doing, you know.
Yeah,
So and that doesn't mean that I get it right all the time.
yeah. Looks like Shane has raised a hand there. Shane has a question.
How are you, Siobhán? When spirit is talking to you, is it via your own voice, like another voice similar to yours, or is it like a very distinguished voice that's coming through? I think Siobhán might have just left again. Are you there?
Yeah, it keeps booting me out. I just keep being booted out all the time. Yeah.
Sorry, it's not me.
I'm having a word with Archangel Michael here to sort out the whole thing. So he's a bit slow off the uptake tonight.
Listen to you because I've been
Spirit's
asking for
having
help
fun.
as well.
So yeah. So I'm still here. So get me while I'm hot before I get booted out again. If anybody has any more questions.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I can
I had
hear
a
you well.
question there, Siobhán. I think you might have just missed it. When spirit speaks to you, is the voice coming through in your another similar voice to your own, or is it a distinguished voice that is like, okay, that's like definitely, or does it change? Is different?
It can change. Initially, it was very different. I could hear different voices and different tones. Like Archangel Uriel used to come in and really deep. I used to call him the dude. So he used to be really deep when I'd feel him nearly resonate through my being, you know. And but then that all changed, and I never get problems with my ears, although I have a problem with one of them now. But I got an ear infection in my right ear to the point where I couldn't hear anything. And then I started hearing more clearly spirit in that ear. And then I got a something in my left ear, and then I started to be able to hear in both ears. So so I can hear them very clearly now. But to answer your question, Shane, a lot of the time now it's my own fault. So sometimes I'd say, is that you now or is that me? Because I'd be saying, am I trying to convince myself of something or is it actually coming through me? But when I'm say reading for somebody and the mediumship is coming through, I will get a sense of the person and I'll get a sense of how they spoke and all of that. I mightn't hear it like their voice, but I'll be able to sort of deliver it like their voice, if that makes sense. So I very keen every way, so it's not just the voice. So yeah, so I at the early days I used to hear it differently, and maybe that was spirit's way of teaching me to know the difference. Now that I'm so much more in tune, I'm comfortable with the knowing. Although sometimes I will still hear a voice outside of myself. I'll be very quick to kind of go, okay, who's that or what's that, you know, and it won't be my voice, if that makes sense. Yeah, so it's like a thought.
Lovely.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed. Yeah, and that was very clear as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Archangel Michael must have heard us. Yay!
Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, Michael.
Beautiful. Thanks, Siobhán.
Thank.
Okay, Celine,
Yeah.
over in Galway.
Oh, hi, Siobhán. Thank you so much. That was very and yeah, just thank you for sharing so much. It was just really beautiful to hear. What I really, that's something that's sort of been happening for me over the last few years. I went through the experience of cancer in 2016, but it really, I think, was the start of a great awakening, basically. And over time, different abilities are sort of coming online. And just the question, I suppose, is out of nowhere, well, through a class I was doing, I was invited to a mediumship circle. It was in the UK on Zoom. And as soon as I said yes to it, I was out walking, and next minute I could feel this woman nearly beside me. Chat, 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 a little bit like what you were saying. And I was like, what is this? But I didn't really feel afraid. And I went into the mediumship circle that night, and I was, God, really nervous. What am I doing here? And then eventually, when they asked each of us to share, I just started describing what I felt was this woman. And someone said, yeah, that's my granny or something. She was an Italian woman. And it sort of a little bit came through, let's say. And then I left that circle and I sort of started privately. I'm doing some classes with a woman in the UK. But do you have any advice around, I suppose, building that muscle or sort of bringing in? Because sometimes I find, the mind, I think she's gone again, is she? Is she there? There, Siobhán. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll keep.
she's there, yeah.
She's still there. Are you there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I suppose what's my question? Yeah, it's really how you sort of, I suppose, developing it more. I am doing that, but I find sometimes I can doubt, or if the energy
yeah,
starts coming through, I can, unconsciously. So it's a bit
yeah.
stop-start. So yeah, would you have any
Yeah,
suggestions?
that makes total sense. So, I don't know if your teacher talks about sitting in the power. Does she talk about sitting in power?
She doesn't really use that
Yeah.
language. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, and I don't really use it either, apart from
yeah,
when I'm teaching. So it's
yeah.
basically where you sit and you can play music, or you can just sit in silence, where you're welcoming spirit into in to work with you. So you're dedicating time and you're putting time aside to sit with spirit. So a lovely way also to do that then is to have Archangel Michael in the space, because he's like he can be your gatekeeper, or the doorman, or the bouncer, as I call him. Yeah, yeah. And so he will make sure that the place is sacred. So do you have, is there a man in spirit, say, for example, that you would know if they were with you, that you knew really well?
Yeah, I suppose my father. I think so.
Yes, yes, because he's
Yeah.
here. So you could ask him to step forward, okay, and feel his energy and really start to sort of tune in there, and he will be part of your spirit team. So when you have somebody that steps forward that you know and trust, and you get to feel comfortable with them being around, spirits start to come in, because your father, as I said, is part of your spirit team, so he will help you. So ask him to step forward, and ask Archangel Michael to open the door and to only let through somebody that you would be able to work with and develop with and be able to pick up stuff with, and then practice with your friends. You know what I mean? Because that's the best way. And, and it's like, because you will still second guess yourself. I still second guess myself. So it's like sometimes when somebody comes and they sit for you and you're saying something to them, they're going, no, 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 I don't know. No. And that can just close you down. So you have to be very kind of, it's almost like I say, we're a little bit like psychic detectives as well, because sometimes when spirit are coming through, they might be talking about something that the person sitting for them doesn't, or sitting for me, doesn't remember, or it could be their great grandfather, and you could be talking about the war, or you could be talking about, and the person sitting mightn't necessarily know that. But if you tell them then to pass this information on when they go home, or a lot of time when people are sitting for me, I'm getting information about their friend's mother that passed away, or somebody that they work with, their mother is coming through and they're giving me the name, and your woman is going, well, I work with that woman, but I don't know, like, so it's just, they just come. So it's about just welcoming them in, sitting with yourself. Another lovely way is to get your pen and paper, and even from your dad, say, so with your dad, and sit down and ask him, just him, to come into the space with Archangel Michael protecting, and write down quotes, and then write down questions,
Okay. Yeah.
and then just let your pen then answer. Let the words just flow, and that when it's written down, you can't second guess yourself, because it's there in black and white. You've written it down. This has come to you from your father or from spirit. But start practicing more with your father, because he won't steer you wrong. If that helps.
Very good.
And
Thank you. And it just turned out
pleasure.
it's his birthday today, so I forgot about that.
Lovely. Happy birthday to your dad. Yeah, lovely.
Thanks a million.
Yeah, Celine.
Not at all. Pleasure.
Celine, I would recommend Siobhán's Psychic Sundays, which are once a month. I've only been to one.
Ah,
But
okay.
I was saying to Siobhán before going, I said, look, I don't push any psychic development within myself. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's all grand, whatever happens. So I went along anyway, and besides having lots of crack, as in fun, we were doing tarot cards, which I'd never done before, and somebody picked 3 cards, and I was looking at them, and suddenly I was channeling a message that went on for about 10 minutes. Normally, when I hear a voice, it's a short sentence, Like I'm like I could be annoyed about a situation. I said, "Why did such and such have to happen?" And blah blah blah. Then I get an answer, her father, and suddenly I get it all makes sense. But that's where I met Shane as well, and I can't remember exactly what we were doing. I think we were trying to read each other's mind or something. I forget what it was. The things you were saying about us all, oh my God. But I up here with my eyes closed, I started to see a house, and I just described the door and the windows and the color of the house and the surroundings, and I got a message, you grew up here. So then I was asking Shane, does any of this make sense? And he said, yeah, that's my house. That's where I grew up. That's where I live. The only difference was I saw a 2-story house, whereas his house is actually 1 story. But that was no attempt to push anything, just to see what comes up. And there were so many other things. My grandfather came through, my uncle came through. My father came through.
Yeah.
I got a healing there, something I was terrified to face since I was a child. And it was like just such a safe space. It was like, oh, look, there's a weed in your garden, just pluck it out and it's gone.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just felt as simple as that.
Mm.
So I do recommend Psychic Sunday. And I'm sorry.
Are they on Facebook, or how do you do them? Or on Zoom, I should say? Siobhán?
No, I haven't started doing them on Zoom yet. I'm doing them in my place in Mullingar, in my house.
You're in Mullingar. Okay.
Yeah.
Once a month. I'm in Galway, but yeah.
Once a month. Yeah.
It's not far from
Yeah,
Galway.
they're great.
No, it isn't. No. And you're on Facebook to follow, is it? Or you're in?
Yeah. Siobhán Brady, Spiritual Mentor, is my page on Facebook.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ken has a question. Go ahead, Ken.
Hi, gang. How you doing? I had a question. May not be able to answer it. Maybe you can shed some light on it. So, just a super brief. 2019 had a cardiac conundrum, and I ended up with some NDEs in there. And since then, before that, I was a construction guy, quite typical here in Canada. I'm not unkind. I didn't make fun of people, but I had my judgments, and plenty of them. Been watching a few people and kind of getting used to this environment, because it certainly didn't tie into my previous life. And since then, one of the things that stick with me, I get emotional about stuff that I wouldn't normally get emotional about, and I thought I put the stuff away as a child, as a kid. Just like everybody else, we got our bad moments and got our good moments. I've had a good life, but I don't like being emotional about stuff. And bear with me. I like you today, Siobhán, but I watched one of your videos last night and I didn't relate at all. And I didn't like it. And then about halfway through, I listened to it anyway, because again, that's my baggage, not yours. And then, oh man, I felt something out of it. And it was a 3 or 4 year old video, and I wasn't relating to you. And it got quite emotional, even though I was half-heartedly listening, or a little stronger than half-heartedly. I don't like her style, but I'll try it anyway. And then like the sad emotions come through instead of good ones. And what I would have said was the big thing was being homesick for being in the light. And I thought that was it, but it just gets triggered all over the place. So anybody could shed some light on that for me and what to do about it, I'd really like to know, because I'm missing, like I was right at the peak of my career and socking money away and sober and successful, and boom, it's been a rough 5 years financially, and I'd like to get back to work, but I can't do it. I'm too emotional. I get out there and it doesn't take much, and I'm triggered. I don't like it.
Yeah, you see, and the more what you resist will persist, is what they say. You've said it a few times there. I don't like it. I don't like being emotional. I don't like it. And your emotions are who you are, Ken. And allowing the emotions to release is all about the healing. So if you're resisting, you're still holding. So you'll stay in that place unless you start to really let stuff out and let stuff go. You know, like I could cry some days, I cry all day. I'm still healing, I'm still clearing, you know, and yeah, none of us like it. None of us like going into those places, into those dark emotional places to do our inner work, because it's not pretty. But, you know, ultimately when we stop fighting with ourselves and start embracing and loving ourselves, and that means every single part of us, no matter how much we might go, oh, you give me the ick, I don't like myself when I'm like this, because we see it as a weakness. Embrace it all and love it all, and love you for who you are at every given turn, and let those tears flow, because you're releasing. So you're holding on. And you know, it can be a masculine thing as well, and a feminine thing for a lot of us women who would be working from our masculine a lot of the time. We hold, and we like to be in control, and we like to sort of be strong. Of course we do, and be organized and be at the top of our game, as you say, you know, and be really successful. And, you know, and sometimes that can feel like it's pulled out from under us, because we have to drop a little into our own hearts, into our own selves, to have a little poke around in there and see what it is we need to let go of. So you said you had a few NDE experiences when you had the was it a heart trouble you had?
Yeah, they're kind of brief, except for, well, they had to put a couple of stents in, and I kind of had a weird thing going on. Of course, I'm a big boy, and I plugged my arteries up with butter and donuts, and ended up in the hospital. And at night, when I went into my, what do they call that? That deep sleep, the REM sleep. And every time I went into there, the
Yeah.
heart rate was down, and I'd go way down. I'd go down so far that I'd pump a little bit less blood. And there's a sensor in the bottom of your heart that needs that oxygen molecule to fire your heartbeat. Well, if you're got poor circulation and then you relax, I shut that off. So I kept every night for 2 weeks. I kept the nurses every time I went into my REM sleep. I was exhausted all the time because I was, what do they call it, sleep apnea, I suppose, be very close to that. And I kept waking up with the nurses in my face, and they're trying to hide the paddles. And I went into a space that was all white light. I was light, they were light. The ground was light, the sky, the air, wherever I was at. And that's the light constituted a semicircle of people. It's the same thing. And there was no tunnel. I was there immediately. And I like being there
Yeah.
a lot. I'm homesick for it. But when I got
Yeah.
back, the nurses, like, it was really weird for the first couple of weeks, because when I got back, that's when because that was just a split second. Every time I got there, I went, oh, hey, hi. And as quick as you can think, that was the length of my NDE, the amount of light I got, just that. And then I got this nurse in my face. Are you okay, Mr. Cook? And the night that I felt really good, I come back in a good mood, and I was pleasant. Oh, yeah, I'm better. Great, right? And I come back with all this cheer. And the nurse is leaving the room. The young nurse was really upset because I come back very cheerful and very friendly, which, being a construction supervisor, maybe I am friendly and cheerful for the most part, but on the job site, that's set that aside. And so very kind to the nurses. They're just wonderful people, and I was happy to see them. Oh, and who are you? And how come you're in my face? And the girl that was at my feet, she's hiding the paddles because they bringing me back, and she's skedaddling with them. And within about 2 weeks, I'd befriended everybody, and they were crying, like she was going out the room crying. I would tell her it's okay, like, if I make it or not. And that kind of blew them away. And it was like small events of that, and those dissipated pretty quick once I left the hospital. But I remember some really strange stuff like that, and it was the after effects that were so profound. And like for 3 months, not quite 3 months, but by 3 months, I think it was gone, and I was back to my mopey self, I suppose. And yeah, there was a lot of strange shit there. And then I got homesick for a long time, and then I started meditating and listening to
I was just
people
going to
and
ask that.
trying to,
Yeah,
trying to figure stuff out,
yeah.
but not gaining much on that end of it. And I really was just getting sick of this emotional roller coaster because it comes out of
I,
nowhere, and I don't know
uh,
whose energy it is. Like they say, "Oh, you're an empath. You're feeling well." There's nobody here, and I don't get it. Right? So,
yeah,
yeah.
you only have to be around somebody or even watch something on TV and you can pick up energy. So this is when you're an empath,
Okay.
that's what will happen.
Yeah. I
You know
don't
what
know.
I mean? So it's, and you know, you're saying you're homesick. You can have that experience here on the earth. You can have that connection with light. That's why I was just about to ask you if you meditate when you said you started meditating. Because I have been brought to the heavens many times and I've never had a near death experience. I have been brought and brought by the angels right up into the heavens, the cosmos, to sit in the light
The
with
only
higher
way I got
beings.
back was psychedelics, mushrooms. If I take them carefully and set and setting, and pretty careful
Yeah,
about that. But I
yeah,
got family members that would not accept that, and if they come, oftentimes people don't present well. They could be having a great time, but they don't present well if they're sitting there drooling and they've had a heart attack. People panic, and so I don't
yeah,
do
that's
that
true.
because
Yeah.
it's just trying to make other people happy, and so
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
what other changes have you made in your life, Ken? Because what other changes have you made in your life? Because you've been given this chance for something.
yeah, for something. That's what I'm trying to figure out in here. That's a
Yeah,
good question. Changes, meditation,
yeah,
that helped quite a bit.
yeah. Huh?
Uh,
So welcome in the emotions.
yeah,
Welcome them in and stop trying to block them because they're you. They're who you are. You know. Welcome them in. All parts of you are welcome, and bring back all parts of you that you have pushed out.
I wish that
Embrace
didn't
them
make,
all.
I wish that didn't make perfect sense. All right. Thank you,
Yeah,
Siobhán.
be careful of how you frame things as well. Yeah, you're welcome.
And I think as well, the
Yeah,
fact that we're men,
that's
we're conditioned not to cry or not to feel our emotions. I remember in primary school, I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I hurt myself, and I started to cry, and the other kids, all boys, were saying, "You still cry?" I don't know what else am I supposed to do. But I blocked it out for years and years, and then by the time I was 28, my body was in such incredible physical pain that lasted until I was about 33. I couldn't sit, stand, or lie down without being in pain. And I used to eventually fall asleep at nighttime out of exhaustion and wake up an hour later. And that was my life for about 5 years. Then I had some spiritual dreams, which led me to an osteopath and a counselor. Won't go into that in detail now, but exactly like Siobhán was saying, I learned how to face my pain. And as soon as I allowed myself to cry, the pain started to leave. And
exactly.
the crazy thing is what do you call a bone doctor? Uh, anyway, a doctor who specializes in bones. I was 33 at this stage, at the age of crucifixion. He said I would end up in a wheelchair by the time I was 40. And a few months later, I had
Yeah,
dreams that led me to these people who helped me to heal. And at 41, I took up a whole new style of martial art. And as I was getting flung around the place and throwing people around the place, I was saying, I don't need no wheelchair. But it was all about facing my emotions. And it's still a challenge. 20 years later, it's still hard as a man to do that. But it's so important and so necessary. And once you let it go, once you cry it out, it's gone. And it's such a relief.
yeah, it is. Because that's where, and you see, we also have to remember we're not just healing ourselves, we're healing our ancestral lines. And, you know, like even people over there in the States or whatever, a lot of it, there's still a lot of the Irish origins, or even think about the Native Americans and all of the stuff that we're healing. We're healing the land and we're healing our ancestral lines. So it's not just ourselves. And yeah, that's the point. I think I was going to make that point earlier about men, and I went off on another tangent where men aren't allowed to cry, or, you know, it's sissy if you cry. And crying, and somebody else wrote in there that vulnerability is a strength. It really is. It really is such a strength. You can build your soul. That because you're just, that's you being you, without all of the conditioning, without all the what you've put in place to protect yourself over the years. When you can stand bare in front of somebody else, that's you saying, this is me, this is my soul, this is who I am, you know. And forget about all the conditioning and the paradigms and, you know, whatever society expects you to be or not be. You know, this is what we're all trying to get back to, is to ourselves. That's the journey we're on, is to get back to our true, authentic selves, like our blueprint. Well, that's the journey I'm on anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and we're getting there.
We're getting there. And Veronique's
Yeah.
said in the chat, it's important to get help, not just to do this on your own, Ken.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we can do certain amounts of it on our own, but no, we even if it's only to say to somebody, you know, sometimes people will get so confused in their head and they'll spend days in there trying to figure something out. If they had only reached out and said that to a friend or a mentor or whatever, they clear it up in a couple of minutes, because it'll always be, oh my God, I never thought of that. I never thought I could look at it that way. So always reach out to somebody, you know. It's really good. That expression is, it really is good to talk, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth has a question.
Yeah, I can really relate to what Ken brought up and Siobhan's response about going ahead and letting the emotions come. And, you know, if we block them for decades, that's when they can feel overwhelming. But when we cry, we're releasing all the feel-good hormones, oxytocin, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin are all being released and are healing. And they've tied shed tears to COPD and heart disease, things like that. So I just wanted to mention to Ken, I'm working with a internationally recognized anxiety coach that's helping me a lot, because we're given messages in early childhood, and we have a part of our brain called the amygdala, and it's constantly looking for danger, and it's picked up every message from every person, all the, you know, unskillful parenting messages and the don't do this, don't do that. And we think that's the real us. The real us is the one listening to that voice. You know, some people call it the ego. I call it the me-go. And the guy's name he's on Facebook a lot, Dennis Simsek. He's actually originally Canadian. But anyway, I've experienced a lot of trauma, very high level trauma during the Cold War. And I've actually, in a 2-month course with him, have been able to release to the point of beyond forgiveness to love, to people who almost obliterated me as a human being. And I get healing sessions with Charlie. I might be in contact with Siobhán now, but I agree, don't go in there by yourself, because when we're spinning in our heads, that's the amygdala, and it's taking both sides of the arguing and taking the negative, the looking for danger. When we speak out loud, we process to a different part of our brain,
Yeah.
through our ears. So I just wanted to thank Ken for being so honest and of where he is, and that's the best way to get help is, awareness of a problem is 30% problem solved. It's when we're in denial. And there are a lot of people in denial, and I'm just glad for groups like this where we can talk. You know, we're sensitive people. We have very sensitive nervous systems, which is why we've got paranormal abilities and psychic abilities. But, you know, during the dark ages, they, you know, did a lot of things to people like us. And so we're all scared, and our parents are scared. But you know how you were saying, Siobhán, that your mother had these abilities. Well, my mother did too, but then they're so scared, you know. And I did have some psychiatric experiences. I call them chemical lobotomies, but you know,
Yeah.
I'm glad I escaped that, but I needed to experience it to just see where people were going. I became like a mental health advocate after that because it was crazy, not me. And so just, you know, wonderful, this group, and that we're bringing these kinds of things up. And I've had visions my whole life. I just took them for granted, but I started writing down, and I have hundreds. So, you know, I'm going to be writing a book on my visions because I don't want to
Wow.
the bad stuff that other people did to me. I'm not going to go ahead and go into depth there, but you know, and just thank you to Charlie for gathering this group together. And he kept saying how wonderful Siobhán was and her vitality, and it really shines off of you. And I'm so glad you got beyond that and didn't stay on those meds for long. They had medications 22 years. 40, I had 44.
Wow.
And they call in the United States is much more heavily medicated. And they even they call it cocktails. They were giving me 5 to 7 at a time, you know, and I'm just glad my brain is healed. I do traditional Chinese, just got my brain back to normal, but yeah. And you know, you were right. It was a chemical lobotomy. I didn't want to bathe, you do a lot of things. So, you know, but you know, we're wounded.
Wow.
So we can heal other people by just saying we've been there and we're here now.
Yeah.
And we did it. So bless your heart.
That's exactly it. Oh, bless you too. My goodness. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah, you know, I hope when this goes out on YouTube and Facebook, that it helps a lot of people. Because I remember when I was 19 and I was suicidal and I went to see a counselor for the first time, and I was convinced I was beyond help. And I spoke to the counselor and said, look, this is all what's going on for me. He said, do you think I can get through this? And she said, yeah, you can. And every time she said, yes, you can get through this, I was saying, no, she really doesn't understand what it's like. So I would explain again why I believed I couldn't get through it. And eventually she said to me, look, everything you're describing, I've been through it myself. You can get through it too. That was the start of real healing for me, because I knew it was humanly possible to get through stuff. So what everyone is saying here, I just hope it's helpful to others out there also.
Yeah, it's so true.
The other thing I'm finding is, because I had to release a lot of trauma. My amygdala was, you know, it's supposed to be the size of an almond. It was probably the size of a peach. But once I'm releasing that and that internal chatter and that constant negativity and fear, well, I'm hearing Source's voice, the Spirit's voice, so much stronger now. And constant guidance. Every moment of every day, any doubt I have, I'm getting these messages, and I can differentiate now because they come through my heart. It's not a thought. It's not me, you know, repeating things. And I don't even take credit for any of my thoughts because I'm a very creative person. I don't know where that came from. But it's amazing now. Once I did that release course, I'm quitting a well-paying job that is the most stressful, chaotic job I've ever had in my life. And I'm being led. God is giving me a job. I'm going to be working in a nursing home with incredibly vulnerable, very people. And I love it because they almost obliterated my ability to give and receive love. And that's all I can do is love these people. You know, and my parents were very into appearances and snob, and this is just the opposite. See, I thought I wanted a job where I could dress nicely and be with professionals, but God just went, I didn't get any of those jobs. They didn't like me. They like wanted me that day. So,
Yeah.
amazing once we release that. The miracles just start happening because God and the angels, I mean, they're just constantly trying to help us and make our lives better. And, you know, and they just have to knock really loud, you know.
Yeah, I do say I have to get the slap in the face. I've stopped saying that though. Since I crashed my car, I stopped saying slap in the face. Yeah, you have to be careful how we phrase things.
When I don't listen is when, you know, when I get in an accident. I call it like, you know how with a child, if they're going toward danger, you give them a little light tap on the behind. You just want them to, you know, it's not, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, a little nudge.
Okay, so anybody else got any question?
So did you, Siobhán, did you say you're now working on Zoom, or do you have to be in person with people?
No, I work on Zoom. I work with people all the time in Australia, and yeah, just set up the Zoom and away we go. I do healings over Zoom. I do readings over Zoom. Yeah, no problem.
Want to put that info in the chat, your connection info?
Yeah, I sure will. I put my email in there.
And I think also when it goes on Facebook and YouTube, I'll put your contacts in the description.
Yeah. WhatsApp is really good for me actually, so there we go. Just make sure I have the right number in. Yeah. Somebody else. Yeah.
Okay, so unless anybody, is there anyone else who'd like to say something? Okay, maybe we'll draw it to a conclusion then. So thank you so much, Siobhán, for coming on and for giving your time.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone else for participating and for being here. And it's been wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
And yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for everybody for staying on and listening to my story. And it was actually lovely to tell it again. And I just want to say thank you to my guides and my spirit and Michael for picking the Wi-Fi.
Oh, we're losing again.
Is it?
Okay, so we heard you saying thank you to your guides and to spirit. Then after that,
yeah, and to Archangel Michael for fixing the Wi-Fi is what I said.
Oh yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. He's still on it. He thought he was going to get away there.
I give him a speed 45 after the call.
See all they're going like, we'll get this.
I couldn't hear you there. Okay, look, thank you everybody, and we'll get this up on YouTube and Facebook as soon as possible, and we'll see you all next month. And stay in touch on the Facebook.
Thank you.
NDE STE Ireland.
Will do.
Thanks,
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Charlie.